Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the Erudition Network. Welcome to this Thursday's Erudition Network Interactive Black History and Knowledge session. I apologize for a bit of tardiness this evening. We have a lot going on with our kids with their finals and their school, and there's a lot that's happening that has to be done to finish out the year. So we were a little bit distracted, a little bit things were going on that had to be done before I got on tonight. I would like to say to all of you who will join or watch this beginning over the recording or whatever, I want you to definitely share this program and to get out here and let people know that there is a public historian, little old me, that comes on every Thursday. Sometimes even when I'm not well, I try my best. One of my friends sent me a thing and saying, man, you need to rest. You come on and you try your best to do this, even when you don't have a voice or whatever. But it is because I truly believe that the message out here and the knowledge is needed. It's because I truly believe that we are still living in times where we need to educate ourselves. And if we fail to do that, we open ourselves to tragedies and issues that we could sometimes avoid just by being knowledgeable, just by being aware. There's so much going on. I was heartbroken this week when I watched the footage of an airman, a senior airman, being killed by a cop, and it shook me because, again, we are looking at a world. This is Florida, right? And we're looking at a world where people want to take history away. People want to hide it. People want to pretend that everything is always hunky-dory and great. Unfortunately, it often costs Black lives. And if you look at the way that it is presented across the world, and I know many of us don't travel all over the world or haven't had the opportunity, but people in the military with the idea that they're going to better their lives. They're going to better their lives. They're going to do things, and they're going to get away from familiar settings, raise a family, do something honorable. But what we see is so horrible. It's so horrible because I've often said, and I continue to say, that Black people of minorities predominantly, we serve in a system that doesn't often show us love. We have had hundreds of occurrences of Black men being lynched and murdered. We've had people who have served who have been assaulted simply because they wanted to pull their uniforms off of them. You can go back as early as James Neely, and I've spoken about James Neely sometimes on this show, who was shot dead by a mob in Georgia simply because him as a service member, right? They didn't want to serve him at a store at a store counter in the South, and they killed this man. The efforts of racists in the South for people who serve. I used to be a anti-terrorism force protection manager for commands that I was at. And I would have to warn and tell service members to be mindful about going out in your uniform, because there are people who would not like you, who will not like you, and in certain areas don't want to see a person of dark skin in a uniform serving a country. This by no means means that it's everyone that does this. But if you have not watched the footage of the senior airman, he was 23 years old. He simply came to his door in a constitutional carry state as a service member because someone beat on his door, and the police officer did not immediately announce that he was a police officer. And when he opened his door with his gun still to the side of him, not pointed at the cop unleashed a barrage of fire at least 5 times, mortally wounding this young man, and just still telling him to drop his gun, to which the young man said, "It's not on me." And he died. And I watched this young man's mother screaming as the Air Force wrapped his body in an American flag and led him out of his body out of a hangar bay. And if that don't break your heart as a parent, as a person of color, he enlisted in the military just before COVID. Wanted to do something with his life. Before he was shot and killed, he was on a Skype call with his girlfriend. And I told several service members, friends of mine, white, black, whatever, I was like, we're not talking about this. How are we serving this nation? Well, we got young people. We always talk about the young folks who don't want to do anything with their lives, or the ones who are falling prey. And this young man simply wanted to live and serve. Someone called the police and said they heard a disturbance or loud noise in his apartment. He was on a Skype call with his girlfriend or talking to her. I've been there. I've been there with Tina. Someplace stationed somewhere, or when I was in Maryland. And I'm just trying to talk. It's emotional to me, ladies and gentlemen, because this ain't new. This is not new. I could give you history and history and history, and I can go down the line, and we could talk about Black service members who were blinded. Sergeant Isaac Woodward, who was beaten so badly, and they stuck their fingers in his eyes, and they blinded this man. simply because he was in a uniform and returning home from serving this very country. The more pathetic thing that is going on about Airman Roger Forson's case, the young man who was killed, is that we're not talking about it enough. We're not talking about it enough. We're not remembering. And then in remembering what, or looking at what happened to him, remembering what has happened to others so we can stop these kinds of issues. There are racists who are jealous simply because you wear a uniform to defend their rights and who they are in this country, and would see you dead. Documented cases of people spitting on men in uniform. My son was accosted at a Walmart simply because he was wearing a device in honor of his dad while I was over in Bahrain. He was too young to serve in the military, but a white man had the nerve to walk up to him and say, "Who told you to wear that?" Not knowing that I was taking my other son out of the bathroom. And when I walked up and heard him say that to my son, I said, "I did. I serve." To which he scuttled away. How dare you? Service comes with a cost. I have a friend who just retired. Love my friend Arto. He served and he got out at one point, came back in, and he just retired. We do that not for just the college. We do that because we love the idea of what America is. And to watch a 23-year-old executed, there's no other way I could say that. And then we wrap him up in the flag, but we don't talk about how he is the victim on our soil as a person who's serving. And we got to hear the cries of his mother, of his family. See, it's a different thing if you're serving and you're in a conflict or you're in a war or you're in engagement and you die, or they honor you. But our black men are being murdered because people are jealous. I'm sure people walked and saw him coming back and forth. This is the second time that someone had called the police to his residence. Because why is this 23-year-old able to stay at his apartment and pay for it and do what he's doing by himself? Why is he driving this car? What? He's been serving since 2019. He's a senior airman. He looks very young. So what is your assumption? Every week we get on here. My wife talks to you about mental health. My sons talk to you about how they live with their peer group, and they laugh and they joke, and I love to see it. And then I get on and I give you history, and I try to get you to understand why your history should be forward and present. Why you should be sharing programs like this. Why is it that a public historian will get on every Thursday, sick, hurt, and whatever? I have gone to work and driven back to do this show because I thought that it was important. Every summer we go into this period where Black and brown lives seem to be disregarded. Because see, now you're free out of these public institutions that we call schools. You're able to be out more time. And what they do is they take the opportunity to murder. I'm gonna get to you all's comments, but I want you to understand this ain't new. This ain't new. I want to give honor to that young man because I know what it means to want to get away and do something with your life. I know what it means to be someplace by yourself, away from your family, friends, and everything, and give up everything to serve a country, just to be executed by a servant, a public servant, a cop who disregards, who doesn't care about who you were, what you did. All he sees is a black man with a gun coming to the door. And then I got to go back. And I got to think about those Isaac Wooders, right? I got to think about James Neely. I got to think about those service members that were hung during the Korean War simply because they didn't want to and run into certain death. I got to think about these things. And I got to say to myself, why do our people know? Why don't they know? The danger ain't just to your thugging cousin who likes to hang out on the street. The danger is to all of us, young and old, male, female. Let me get to y'all's questions. Good to see you, Sean Anthony. Hey, Mike. I know it's probably not the show y'all thought you were going to get. Lonnie, good to see you, my brother. It provokes me to no end, knowing only a few wish to perpetuate racism. Yeah, it's enough to keep hate strong. But here's the thing, Tina. Because they want to provoke it, because they want to perpetuate it, they teach another generation to keep it going. It's not enough people who want to perpetuate racism yet. The man who don't agree with racism and cultural hate still permits such hatred. You know, Dr. King, in his letter from Birmingham jail, he said, right? He talked about good men not doing things. He talked about preachers not getting involved, men of God and people of God who said that they served Christ, but still would sit there and allow racism, bigotry, and murder to happen in the South. And it a lot of times justified by Christian mentality, warped Christian mentality. I went to get my husband in fights by his side. Anytime a fight looked like it was coming, it's because you crazy. I love you. I had no clue giving my baby a military keepsake so he could be close to his dad and American hero would cause conflict. But I was ready to fight. Yeah, it's a mess, Lonnie. You do a lot for people. I try very hard to get on here and do that. Eric, good to see you, my brother. Yeah, I know it was sad. We never know what the next action of fate will be, but we must always remember to remain prayed up and ready to defend ourselves. The military is not being as aggressive against the hatred against those of us who have sacrificed for their country and their households. I agree. Ladies and gentlemen, my biggest issue with this is that we have young people out here who want to do things in their lives and who want to be an example, who want to be a leader, who want to take, who see their lives as more than just nothing. Some quick moment, some place to have a party. And, you know, I got my brother Eric is on here, my friend Eric, um, and we served together. And it broke me up, Eric, because when I looked at this young man, I saw you. I saw you. I saw a young man coming to his first command, coming to a ship and trying to do something with his life. And I see so many of the young men that I've had to mentor, to teach, to grow when I look at this young man, and it breaks my heart that we still live in a country where people feel you can't be considered human. It breaks my heart. So all I can say is rest in peace, my brother. I pray that the Lord took your soul up without pain. And I pray for a country that will allow something like this to happen to any of its citizens, but definitely those who serve, who sign that blank check to give their lives, because that's what you do. You don't know where you're going. And Eric, I agree. I completely agree. It could have easily. I told Tina when we watched it that only there for by the grace of God. It could have been so many others, but this is what we live through, what we're living in. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that was a huge, powerful opening to this program. I like to give time on Erudition um, for you all to present your questions, ask questions, historical questions, things that you're curious about. And I like to give time for that. And I don't want to take away from that, but I wanted to open this show up with that. And I want you to go look at those men, those names that I named. I want you to go look up what happened with Senior Airman Roger Forson. Um, I'm sure you will find it. Um, and I want you to go out and I want you to start looking at these situations uh, with veterans who have served. Look up Isaac Woodward. Um, go read his story. Powerful story. Many books have been written about him. Go look up Private James Neely and see what was done, as well as many others. And if you need more, please feel free to hit us in our on the Erudition Network on our page or in our group, and I guarantee you will get information from me. But I'm gonna open it up for you all. Anybody have any questions? This is the time for your historical questions. You may think it is nothing, but it is something that people can use tonight to learn. So I want you to get on and ask those questions, whatever they may be. And I'll give you a couple of moments to do that. And if as I always say, if we can't do that, we'll move further and we'll go into something else. There's always something to discuss here on this program. And I again thank you all for all of you all who are here tonight. Okay, Tina. Has there ever been a time when the military set a hard line against hatred towards military associated people of color from its citizens? Do you mean have they set a hard line? Did they do I'm trying to understand your question, Tina. Was there ever been a time that the military set a hard line against hatred? Well, yes. I mean, we could go back to the Civil War and we can see how um, the military, the Union, set a hard line for it. But here's the thing: there will always be perpetrators. There will always be people, as you said earlier, who will try to get around what is going on. a lot of times what we find racism in the military, it's always disguised as policy. Policy. Someone has manipulated or misinterpreted a policy. I remember there was a time where one of our sailors, she had gotten her hair done. Well, as a black woman, you know it costs a lot of money to get your hair done. And she had her hair done, but she had it in a bun. And the military required it to be in a bun, right? And she did that. But there was a chief, motivated by the fact that either he didn't like her, but I really believe it was racism, who decided he wanted to challenge this young lady, not caring how much she had spent on her hair, not understanding the culturalism of it, not the fact that she was still by the letter following the regulations that had been put out. What he did was he told her, well, go get it taken down. And she had to come find a bunch of senior people to say, wait a minute, what does it say? I'm wearing it. It fits my hat. It does this, it does all of that. And we had to go to find chiefs and other people of color to challenge him, to which he said, well, I just thought it was a little bit too big. You thought. And you didn't care that had she just followed what you said. These are little microaggressions. Little microaggressions. But they go a long way to dishearten those who serve. They take that home with them. So, yes, there have been times. My partner is in the Air Force. They did a stand down talking about this, but that's really not enough. We need to go further and making sure we pass along our knowledge in every capacity that we can. How can we tell young people to go out and pull themselves up by the bootstraps and then watch them get murdered? And see, that right there is the problem. This is the reason why we don't talk about it, because we don't want that example. We don't want to showcase that this is happening to good people. Ain't that what they say? You don't happen to get, but the bad people are the ones that get shot. The military seems to permit the problems due to the lack of zero tolerance against anyone associated with the military, past or present, associated, because we sacrifice our country and our households. Yeah, it can feel that way. But I believe that, I spend a lot of my time, and I know a lot of service members, friends of mine I know of, who go out and mentor and talk and have been pushing this situation and others to try to educate people. So I do think we do a better job in some areas, but it could always be better. All right, is that it? Anybody else? Anybody got any other questions? Any other questions? All right. If there's no other questions, Mike, you asked me a question yesterday. I try, ladies and gentlemen, I try to answer the questions of the viewers and people when they ask. My sons were on the other day. Let me speak about that with my sons. My sons were on yesterday, and my youngest, kids are kids, but my youngest really had me beaming yesterday because he created a PowerPoint. It wasn't very long, but he wanted to talk about slavery and when it started, right? And its effect. And I was floored because and he gave me his PowerPoint. He wanted me to upload it for the live program. And he said, but Dad, I need you to check it. And he put a disclaimer in the beginning, letting people know, hey, I'm still young. I'm trying to learn. But let me tell you all something that really moved me with what he did. It showed me that the things that we discuss, the things we talk about, it can reach our children. He said he was amazed at the 12 point, the amount, the size, the millions of enslaved people, that was an accurate number. He's like, I thought it was made up. But he was right. And that's how you gain knowledge. That's how you grow. And then he said, Dad, can you look at it so that you can fact check me? Because I don't really want to make it wrong. And that's all I did. It's what we do for this program every week. We come on, we do what we do, talk about history, and I ask you to ask questions, and I challenge you to look into things, and I say, hey, whatever you ask, we'll go into it. So during that program, Mike, I don't know if you're still with us, Mike, but Mike asked a question about the Statue of Liberty. And I laugh because there's a lot of history behind the Statue of Liberty, right? If you all remember, I don't remember which one it was. It was the Nicolas Cage movie. My sons love Nicolas Cage. My wife does too, but yeah, I'm all right with him too. But the National Treasure movies, one of the National Treasure movies, they talk about the Statue of Liberty, right? And they talk about the people who were involved, right? They talk about Bartholdi, but they specifically mention Laboulaye, right? And this is important because there is a man named Edward Laboulaye. He was the person who proposed the Statue of Liberty, right? He was the person that proposed. Good to see you, Tony. You probably have to watch, if you just get with, you have to watch the beginning, man. We're talking, and I know you were a service member and you would definitely understand where I was coming from as we were talking about the young senior airman, Roger Forson. But I'm going to try to answer Mike's question here that he proposed yesterday about the Statue of Liberty. But Laboulaye, he was the person. So there's a lot of history and mistruths to this stuff, right? So Laboulaye was the one that proposed the idea of a statue that represented liberty, freedom. And he did it in 1865 because he wanted, the idea of what Lincoln had said about a new birth of freedom, new birth of liberty. And there are many people who were involved in this. Frederick Bartholdi was the actual person commissioned to design it. Gustav Eiffel, who you will remember being involved with the Eiffel Tower, was the one who created the framework for it. But the thing that gets out here is that people take history and they mold it and they merge it and they do things. So there is a story out here that the model, right, for Frederick Bartholdi was black. If you all heard that, please chime in and tell me that you've heard that the original model for the Statue of Liberty was black. Anybody heard that? Has that been said to anybody? Do you remember hearing about that maybe in school, or maybe you heard it on social media? And I want to clear this up because I think that we need to, so that we better understand the characteristics of the men who helped to build this statue. Anybody? Eric said, you heard that last week on the boys show. Yeah. Okay. Somebody probably said it. Yeah, it's a horrible situation, my brother. Well, let me tell you all this because we're 30 minutes into the program. A lot of the men who were involved, you have to understand that the Statue of Liberty was, when it was built, right? Um, the Statue of Liberty was built during, or after the Civil War, right? It was proposed um, to be built directly after the Civil War in 1865, but it really didn't start getting full fruition until a couple of years later, right? And we didn't really see anything until going into the 1880s. But the point um, is that men had died in the thousands under the auspices of liberty, right? And so, because this was given a gift and it was allowed, there were still people in the country who were anti-black, coming out of the Reconstruction era, right? And so it is not lost to us that the Statue of Liberty, that they point out every now and again, has broken chains at her feet. Well, those broken chains were put there because, let us understand that Edward Laboulaye was an abolitionist. Let us understand that Frederick August Bartholdi was an abolitionist and a person who saw no difference in color. But let's all now get into the foolery of history. Bartholdi's early sketches, they try to say that he sketched the Statue of Liberty to represent, right, that this was supposed to represent the goddess of the Roman goddess Libertas, the goddess of liberty and justice. But here's the thing. The early sketches were of an Egyptian. Yes, were of an Egyptian. Now, here's the funny part. Historians will tell you, no, it wasn't based on a black woman, because they do not see the Egyptians as black. And that's the foolery. That's the foolery. Right? We partake in this historical, pseudo-historical foolery. But Bartholdi, his own sketches, and by his own admittance, right? He had a woman model for him who was Egyptian. And it was actually influenced by an Egyptian idea of taking a black woman and building a construction or a project, but it never happened. You feel free to go look this up. But if you were to go online right now, and this is the reason why I'm making this point, you were to say, was the Statue of Liberty based on a black woman? They will tell you absolutely no. And then when you dig deeper into the Edward Laboulaye's, into the Augustus Bartholdis, and you start to see, why did they gift it to America? Why did they gift it during the time in which they did? Edward Laboulaye specifically said that they commissioned the statue to commemorate the abolition of slavery in the United States. So that means that the Statue of Liberty was built to suggest that America had finally understood that slavery was wrong. So all of those Italian and Irish immigrants who came and said how they saw the Statue of Liberty as a symbol of freedom, that was built off the remembrance of thousands of slaves who had been killed, murdered used. You can never deny the ties that the Statue of Liberty has to slavery. The broken chains of their feet are just an example. Holding up the light is an example. This is all just symbolism, but it's symbolism built from real history. And this is why we have multiple, and to show you how important that was. There are Lady Liberties all over the world. In fact, there are Lady Liberties all over the country. And I ain't just talking about the one in Vegas, right? That's for commercial use. There's a Lady Liberty in Birmingham, Alabama. Yeah. There's Lady Liberty in Tennessee. The Paris, Tennessee. There's a Lady Liberty in France. There's a Lady Liberty in Osaka, Japan. And I can go on and on. But see, the idea of liberty and freedom, you know, that copper lady, that brown lady that she used to be, because she used to be brown. Let's never forget that it was a sign that was associated with slavery. And Mike, I hope that answered some of your questions here, because I thought it was an interesting question, and I definitely wanted to get into it today. And I always tell you guys, if you have a question for me, I ain't gonna say I'm the smartest person in the world, but I do spend a lot of time studying, increasing my knowledge. And I've started to get more on my sons to do the same, and I am seeing the results of that. And of course, there's my wife. How do we get the military to set a zero tolerance standard that we need to prevent future attacks against? So the military has a zero tolerance standard on racism, Tina. The problem is, as I said earlier, is how we use policies, regulations. We are still in an America where they have to pass a law for you to be able to wear your hair a certain way. We have to understand the design of things and how people manipulate. It's one of those things where, you know, even when we talk about, you know, codes of conduct in businesses, and how I really wanted us to start to look at how codes of conduct in business is being used to marginalize, to kick minorities out of jobs, codes of conduct that are not being utilized against others, whites, right? I've seen this on the job where a white person could come in every day late, every day, or they could come in earlier than anybody. 5 o'clock in the morning, you're supposed to be there at 9. And they'll come in at 5. And they'll leave before everybody else leaves, right? And go home. And everybody applauds that so-and-so came in at 5. But what they're never looking at is that so-and-so came in at 5 and left before the actual work was being done. And then you, who got kids and whatever, you get in at 9. They say, oh, you cut it close, but you here, you do all of the work. And God help you, right? On the day where you get sick, your body is tired, you come in at 11. You call, you do everything. And they pull you in the office and they say, hey, why you getting here so late? But they never pulled so-and-so in the office to say why he getting there so early. And they're really concerned because You are the one that's doing the work. And then they'll bring some other people in. And God help you if you start saying, wait a minute, I feel like y'all using me, pimping me. Oh, well, you got to go. Let's go bring in another person. And let's slave them out for a little while. These are policies that are being manipulated at Fortune 500 companies. I heard the niece of Medgar Evers at a conference talk about this. We're aware of it. But at the lower levels, it happens every day. So when we talk about the military, let's understand that there, as you go down further, it's indicative of us we have to challenge. We have to share programs, and we're talking about it like tonight. We got to come with facts, figures. And I know y'all hate to hear it, statistics. But I'm not talking about, so when I say statistics, I'm not talking about, right, theoretical, factual stats that show, hey man, there's a lot of black folks been through this company. And Susie and Stacy and Mike and John, they still here, don't know what they doing, but you keep getting rid of a lot of minorities. They keep going through these things. What else did you say here, Tina? Because I don't believe in military associates being attacked is cool. No, it's never coincidental. As I told you, I studying at ATFP and looking at the anti-terror force protection and understanding how many assaults have happened within our own country, it is shocking and it is sad. It is sad. That's why we don't send certain minorities to go recruit in certain areas. We don't talk about that. But that happens. Well, it would be dangerous to send Terry over there because, you know, they don't really like black. Yeah, that type of thing. Eric, how are you doing on the time for your show? No, I think it's going all right. I don't think I'm going to move anytime too soon unless people tell me that they need me to. I will say, I just hope that people are sharing the program, Eric, and that we're growing. We got a decent amount of people in here tonight, but a lot of people watch later, and that's fine. I just want us to be sharing so that we can grow and we can grow on our knowledge, and we can grow this network. That's always been my biggest issue, and so I think we're doing okay with this time. Anything else, y'all? I asked Mike's question. I don't know if Mike was still in, but he'll catch it. But any other questions? Any other history questions? You know, I was on the other day, and I was venting, and I offended somebody. It wasn't my intention to offend anybody, but it's funny because my son was talking about that in this thing. But I was talking about Newton and Newton's laws of motion, and somebody got in there offended. They sent me a message saying, I know Newton's laws. I didn't say you didn't. I said a lot of people don't. And that a lot of people don't know these laws, but these are God-given laws also. We give credit to Newton, but we forget that Newton also was a religious man. Right? Just because a man describes what God has given does not necessarily mean, right, that we ignore the God part of it. And this person took offense to it. So I want to say tonight, it's never my intention to offend you. But when I talk about Newton's laws of motion or perpetual motion, when I talk about those things, I'm talking about it from a pretty strong knowledge base. And when I go into it, I'm going to be honest and I'm going to be factual. Right. And this is one of the reasons why one of my biggest goals with Erudition now, waiting for my kids to go into their summer vacation, is we're not going to stop the teaching on here. We're going to do recordings where we talk about maybe 15, 30 minutes. We talk about science. We're talking about English. My son saying how much he dislikes reading some of this poetry. Well, why do they make this poetry important to you? Why is it important that you read Shakespeare? Right? Why do they press this? Why is it more important to read Shakespeare over Paul Laurence Dunbar? These types of things. So we're going to talk about that ELA. We're going to talk about different books that your young people should be reading that aren't big books, right? That aren't going to blow their, oh my God, it's just you want them to read a 500-page book. Reading is a muscle. If you flex that muscle enough, if you build it enough, you can get through books pretty quickly and maintain the understanding and the knowledge. That love of reading is universal. It's universal. So if you want them to read a Bible, then you should be able to make sure that they're reading other things too. But I digress. Speaking of science, I didn't know it, but the flat earth community is Eric, ladies and gentlemen, the earth is not flat. I'm gonna say it again. The earth is not flat. Can we stop with the flat earth theory? Can we stop? Can we stop telling people that the earth is flat and that we oh my God, man. Do we not understand the mathematics behind measurement? Do we not understand these God-given facts? And see, this is what gets me, man. This is what gets me. Uh, we they used to teach us the scientific process, right? They used to tell us this stuff. Now we don't even go into it no more, man. Now we got people just saying anything, man. And folks out here truthfully believe in this. Truthfully believe in this. Oh man, you can't break out of the what's the word they use? Come on, I know y'all, some of y'all done heard it. You can't break out of the they try to use a biblical term. Man, it's escaping me. The firmament. Oh man, they can't break out of the firmament. How foolery is that? But it's there. So I guess we got a nickel or a quarter or a half dollar spinning around in space, and we don't understand the moon effects, which is what we call the tides, right? We don't understand the sun effects, right? Which is also mandates our spring tides. Because we don't understand these things, because we failing in science. We sit through a solar eclipse and say to ourselves, well, how does this happen? A lunar eclipse that we see often. We don't understand any of these things, so we call the earth flat. But there is a such thing called the sun, earth, moon system. There is a complete system on how it moves, how planets move, the perturbations and how it pulls and yanks and lets go and all of this, how mass works. All that really shows me, Eric, oh my God, do not listen to my son. I'm not co-signing. I'm just saying, I thought this was, yeah, it should have been disproven. But how can you disprove something when there's so much foolery and non-fact driven um, ideas out here? This is why I did look, man. I'm telling you, I recently just decided that we were going to do this. We're going to start talking about um, all of these different things, science, not assuming. Because here's the thing: at the worst, people will say they'll say, "Hey, man, I already know that." Great, great. So that means you'll chime in, you'll ask questions, you'll be in here. So when we start talking about this stuff, you will be there. Science is deep, man. Science is just not space. All these things, God worked it into a system, right? You talk about the natural world, the plants. You talk about the moon, the stars, right? You talk about how things work, homeostasis, how we work, and you could go on and on and on. But what is being taught to our kids in science is really scary because whatever they're being taught, they're taking it and they're saying, "Oh, okay, well, the Earth is flat, right? Weather is a part of is a fiction of your mind. We're not really going into outer space. We don't have satellites. We don't know anything about orbits or epigees or perigees. I think I talked about that a couple of weeks ago. We don't know anything about how the Earth works, the mantle, the core, the outer core, the inner core." And then I sit here with my sons and they sit in classes and we start listening to this and we go, wow. You know, I remember telling my son, and Eric, you probably don't remember it, but I remember we had to learn it. And I remember sitting with my son and we're talking about the Doppler shift, the Doppler effect, and how we use the Doppler effect, right, to determine whether stars and galaxies are moving towards us or away from us. People have heard about Doppler. When you say Doppler, they say, "Oh, the weather." But there's ways that we have learned to determine certain things, how the universe works. It's not in a vacuum. That's not something that just happened out of nowhere. These come from ancient times. Get my book, my last book, and read about how the Kush inspired the Sumerians and the Egyptians. I talked the other week, I started to talking about the summer equinox, the vernal equinox, the winter solstice, the autumnal solstice. These are not witchcrafty things. These are points of fact of science. And that's see, Eric, you got me going off. You said the choo-choo train. Yes, the choo-choo train. But when people can't even define these things, because what happened was they sat in a class and they were like, "Ah, this is uninteresting." The Doppler effect is something, maybe we'll get into this coming up since we're pretty much at the end of the program. But the choo-choo train is important. The apparent shift is what you perceive. The change in something as something comes closer to you and moves away from you lets us know that something is moving. This is how we determine the speed of a sound wave, the observer velocity, the actual frequency of the sound waves. Don't get me into this because we'll be here all night. And I've taught this all over the world. But that's just one part of what we need to start getting into. A lot of people, you're going to say, "Man, we signed on the Erudition Network to do history, man." You going into English, you going into science, you going into physics, man. You doing too much, man. But they all play into our history. They all play into our history. What you learn and where did this knowledge come from? Who are the people who came up with this knowledge? Right? I've told you all on many occasions that a lot of times we don't even know about African math because it's not taught to us as African math. Right? We are told that it's witchcraft, divination, and all of this, and that's the game. But I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna go through this timeline again because a guy sent me a thing, was like, that's an amazing timeline, man. And I went through and I looked at it. But I want you to think about it, right? 12th century, Hugo Central took the math from the Islamic Africans, from the Africans, call it whatever their religion is, and he took it to Spain. It was accepted in Spain in certain areas, and they turned it into alchemy because they saw it as witchcraft. How do they know how to do this? And they started to hide it from the Roman church. Go read some of these books by some of these authors where they start talking about alchemy and they start talking about the original Illuminati and all of this stuff, right? That's what they're talking about. The theft of knowledge that they took out of Africa post the Dark Ages. And they turned it into alchemy. They turned it into geomancy, right? Where they could be able to determine how to build their castles, their things, and try to figure out the math of the African and how they could build their cathedrals, which Africans played a part in building. And then they tried to use it to determine fate, to prophesy, right? Because it's like, this is amazing. And then later on, a German mathematician, Leibniz, took the system and he started to add ones and zeros to it. And if you know anything about math, what happened was he called it, it later became what? Binary. And then another man named George Boole, much later, Boolean algebra, he took binary arithmetic and he changed it into code. And then lastly, a man named John Van Norman took Boolean algebra and he used it to create what is known as a digital computer. And now we have cell phones and computers and GPS and all of these things, but that's all built off African math. It's all built off African math. Deterministic chaos is built off African math. Chaos theory is built off African math. The butterfly effect, built off African math. Strange attractors, built off African math. And yet we credit a lot of Europeans, whites, names are endless, for coming up with this stuff that helped us to be able to break out of the firmament and travel and send satellites into outer space. We need to start learning who we are. Yeah, I had that situation too, Eric. It's how I beat the police. I show a zero Doppler shift when I see them turning a certain way. Well, at least you learn. You're using your understanding. And here's the thing: I had that situation years ago. The only traffic ticket I ever had for because the guy said that he was reflecting off of my. He got a reflection off my license plate. There's no license plate at the front of my car at the time. And so we need to get into the idea of refraction, diffraction, and all of these things. But I've kept you all too long. And I know this last part is probably people are like, what is he talking about? But we are going to do a better job of teaching science, English, literature, usage, proper ways to structure your sense and all this. And we're going to try to do it in a way where I want to bring my young kids in here so that they can learn, you can learn with them because they're learning every day. And we can talk about the proper structure of a sentence and things like that. And bring different folks on or help with the recordings, and we can do it that way because I think we need it. I appreciate you, Tony. I hope you get something really great from that book. Working on the second one, medieval time, Middle Ages. So I want you all, and don't forget Tina's book. Tina has a new book out. And I want you to, I'm gonna put that in here before I get off of here. Where, my wife does a lot in trying to help with mental health, and this book comes a lot from a lot of her study and things like that. It is worth it. I think you will get something from it. So please go out there and get that book. Oh yeah, Tina has a book out from Lulu, and order it and get it in and read. It's a good read. It's a page turner. You will gain something from that. It's funny that you say that, Tony, because here's the thing. I've also challenged. I told my sons to write a book about it 2 years ago, but the kids, they're just, oh, okay, Daddy. But we want information coming out of the Erudition Network in multiple different ways to affect different parts of this world and to teach in a better way, so that we can start getting people to understand this foolery out here. We will not stand for it. Well, I'm going to end this program again talking about Senior Airman Roger Forson, and I'm going to say, ladies and gentlemen, it is so important that we learn our history. It is so important that we prioritize it, that we teach it to our kids. It could save their lives. It could avoid stumbling blocks. It can help us to better understand who we are, so we can better teach them to who they are. Help us grow the Erudition Network. You see the ticker at the bottom. We do take donations or anything that you would like to give for the program. It helps us buy cameras, beef up for these programs and things that we do. So we greatly appreciate if you could do that. All right, I'm gonna get out of here because I hear my family in the background starting to simmer up. An hour is a lot to ask for silence in this house. A lot. We kept the questions up here all day, all night. I just realized that. But you guys kept questions coming in, so I'm happy with that. But let me get on out of here. God willing, I will see you all next week. We're going to try something different coming up here. You will hear about it. We're going to try to add a phone line to the program. I'm investigating that right now. People don't like to come on, but they might be willing to call in. And so we're going to try to experiment with that coming up on some of the shows. And that way we can be able to hear from people as opposed to you having to type a long paragraph in here. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, let me get out of here. Yeah, I know you'll call in, Eric. Be blessed. And until next time, thank you for joining us tonight. See you later.